Bayliss in a revolutionary machine, which we'll tell you more about shortly. Should also be bike 16, actually should be forward on the fourth row, Chris Downing. And Stan Bayliss's machine, no name. He's just built it, but it's got a Kawasaki power plant and gearbox. 1000cc out of a machine that was wrecked when it had only 673 kilometres on it. No scratchings in this event, so 13 line up on the grid.
The field almost equally made up of two-stroke and four-stroke machines. 6 four-strokes, in fact. And they wind down now into Castrol Curve, come up to the start-finish line. It'll be a clutch start. There's the Bayliss machine, the big white whale of a machine there. And you can see that Stanley Bayliss is, in fact, sitting down, rather like in a motor car rather than up. Will Hagen will tell you more about it soon.
No rear suspension on the machine. Rear brake is a drum from an XL Falcon. Stanley's applied his own thoughts and he says there's nothing else in the world like it. It steers beautifully, brakes beautifully, and it's very safe.
Ready for a start in this 8-lap ABC 1000cc sidecar sprint. New starting technique at Oran Park today. Flashing red lights. And they're green.
Brian Payne started to urge forward at 99, but didn't get away. Then he held it, but now gets going well. He's into second place.
Chris Robinson's in the lead on bike 6, but look at Stanley Bayliss come through the field. You can easily tell him because he's twice the size of any other machine there.
Slots into fourth place. The big white machine. No name, no sponsorship. Out wide,
Tony
number 11
Cornwall.
is Cornwall with Joanne Chesney.
But it's Chris Robinson with passenger Craig Stewart in the lead.
Brian Payne second and 99. In the absence, of course, of Greg Neal, who broke a leg racing here in about August, and Doug Chivers, Margaret Halliday. Sorry, he was in about June. Doug Chivers, Margaret Halliday had an accident earlier up in Queensland and they're still not fit. That's Doug, isn't? He had to have his leg re-broken, so the Australian champions and Grand Prix winners out.
Big challenge here from Peter Schumacher on the blue bike, number 5. It's a Kawasaki 1000cc coming up behind Crane, who's on a Yamaha-powered 750cc two-stroke.
Jim Duncan, passenger on 99, very nearly lost his handhold there and was looking very shaky for just a moment as they battle for second place.
Well, you're not going to find a way on the outside over the Honda dogleg. Split first to second place is 5.3 seconds after one lap. And this is the dice, the second position between Brian Payne on the red Transarc 750 and Peter Schumacher, bike 5, the Kawasaki 1000.
Very different passenger styles there as the race leader goes through. That's Robinson, they've got such a good start from Tasmania.
Just look at the dice back for fourth position there as Bayliss looks down the inside.
Very standard engine on Stanley Bayliss's machine, number 30. Just got an exhaust system, and he said, as we see just in front of him, Dave McLaughlin and Martin Long from Powervan Motorcycle Services. There's Bayliss. His passenger, John Foster. John Flood, at least.
Dice for second position. Lap 2 of this 8-lap ABC sidecar sprint. There's the leader. The full length of the straight plus some over the Honda dogleg. This time Schumacher, no, has a tentative look down the inside but decided it's all a bit beyond him.
The lead's built up to 7.6 seconds over this pair, battling for second place. Still Payne doing the better of the two of them at 99. Schumacher, Craig Johnston, and 6. Still in third place, still looking for that 10th or 2 that would put them up into second. More active passenger in the third place machine, particularly on left-handers.
There's a lot of survival instinct comes into play, Will. If your suspension isn't working properly, then you've really got to get active to keep the thing on the ground, and if you don't, you're the one who pays the penalty.
That's the situation, as you can see. Very little gap between second and third as they still battle in this 8-lap, 21-kilometre race. And closing up well in third place, Peter Schumacher.
There's the leader opening a big gap.
And Schumacher closer, but still not close enough to stay on the throttle just a fraction longer and dive down the inside, so that Brian Payne hangs grimly onto second place, certainly under more pressure than he's been so far. 8.4 seconds the gap now. Fourth place and consolidating is Dave McLaughlin, Martin Long. From fifth place, Stan Bayliss.
And the classic struggle between a two-stroke and a four-stroke round Oran Park. Brian Payne two-stroke in the lead in this dice for second position. Obviously quicker under acceleration. The four-stroke having more grunt out of the slower corners, like right here. But then unable to make it up in the mid-range. And about the only chance he's really got to catch him is to make a demon run under brakes. He's been trying for the last couple of laps down into Castrol, but I suspect that maybe he's hanging back just a little bit, not wanting to show his hand too early.
He was on the power early there, though. Should be well situated. Coming up now to the Honda flip-flop. Quick change of direction here. Still, though, not close enough to dive down the inside.
And Jim Duncan, the passenger, oh, and that's it. It's all over. He's stopped.
So that brings 23, Dave McLaughlin and Martin Long, up into third place as Peter Schumacher and 5, the Kawasaki 1,000-pound machine with Craig Johnston pull up. And a very safe second place now for Brian Payne and passenger Jim Duncan.
And Duncan probably one of the most languid sidecar passengers I've seen in a long time. Well, the chassis obviously working so well that he has to do very little work at all.
Robinson and Stewart going well, lapping very much faster, obviously, than anybody else in the race. The lead building up towards 10 seconds now as they start the second half of the race. They're on lap 5 in an 8-lapper.
The lap record,
passenger working very well.
The lap record, in fact, stands to Doug Shivers and Margaret Halliday, set 2 years ago.
Wheel up there, and you can see how well they're working. The rider's got confidence in the passenger there. He knows he's out far enough to lift the wheel a little bit. Look how hard he's working. Doing a tremendous job, Stewart. And again, really down on the job as they loop through Castrol Corner, up onto the straight. The new situation now, third place with the retirement of number 5, McLaughlin and Long. They've pulled away quite well from Stan Bayliss, the man who started road racing in 1949. Speedway in 55, got out of that in the 60s because he decided it was very hard to do road race practice on a Saturday, Speedway Saturday night, road race Sunday. You had to concentrate on one thing or t'other, and it's generally felt around the sport that the man's heading pretty close to 60 years of age. He's just built himself a new machine. Again, watch the passenger here, doing so well on the lead bike, Craig Stewart. Through the S's. And then watch him here, Yamaha corner. Wheel stays down this time. You can see the wheel's closed in, so no chance of him rubbing elbows on it, otherwise there would be. And then really works over the dog leg. I don't imagine there's a lot of viewers would like to change place with Craig Stewart. out on their penultimate lap.
Not necessarily the best handling outfit in the world either. For all the twitching and weaving you see them doing, they're lapping at about 1:26, and that's about 6 seconds outside the lap record held by Doug Chivers and Mark Halliday. So they're working hard to get their 26. We go back to second position in the motorcycle race with Brian Payne and Jim Duncan. And they're about half the length of the straight in front of third place there. And that, of course, is Dave McLaughlin with Martin Long. And you can just hear the big four-stroke wind out.
Not a lot of guys that race solo motorcycles who many people think are crazy. There's not many of them that would get on that little platform with its 2 or 3 handles and start, as they say, swinging, diving around with a lot of sideways forces, your nose very close to the ground, and an incredible sensation of speed. Not at all my choice of the way to spend a Sunday either, I must say. Yeses now for third place, and starting the last lap for the race leader. Again, the passenger as in sailing, ballasting on the inside, keeping it well anchored.
Final round of the Australian Road Race Championships to be decided next weekend at Calder in Victoria, which of course will also be the last round of the Swan Insurance Series. So an interesting weekend of motorcycle racing coming up down there, with 5 classes of the Australian Championship to be decided. And all these people in the sidecar events will be down there.
And the race leader's toe, Chris Robinson, just about kissing the ground as it hangs down in these Nealer outfits. He's leaning on his knees, chest supported on the petrol tank on a little bit of a pad. Far from ideal driving position, and not much of a position either for the man swinging. Tucks down when they're in a straight line, gets out again, and hangs on grimly, I imagine, when it's braking and walking around a bit, as they tend to do. One of the most unusual machines in motoring sidecars. Very different left and right-hand corners, but it certainly is victory in the 8-lap sprint to Chris Robinson, passenger Craig Stewart in the Windle. A long way in front of Brian Payne and Jim Duncan in 99, a race time of 11 minutes, 31.17 seconds.
And a split of 18.13 seconds between first and second position.
And an average speed of 108.4 kilometres an hour for the race winner. Third place to McLaughlin and Long in 23.
And McLaughlin finishes 11.88 seconds behind Payne and 30 seconds behind Robinson.
The FM Challenge Series has been dominated so far by Michael Dowson. He won the 2 legs last week in his home state of Queensland. He won the first leg here this morning at Oran Park, and he's going out to make it 4 in a row. 10 laps of the Oran Park circuit, and Peter Clifford has joined with Will Hagan and John Smales.
And out on the track, coming round on the warm-up lap for the production machine race, all using standard motorcycles on standard tyres, ostensibly just as you can go into the showroom and buy.
You must be impressed, Peter Clifford, because of the way Richard Scott's been going in England this year. He holds a lap record at 1:18, but Michael Dowson, who's taking pole position, broke it with 1:17.3, and therefore will start ahead of Paul Feeney on the Kawasaki. Grant Hodson, the C-grader who went so well last weekend in only 18 months of road racing. David Lucci, that's pronounced, Roger Hayes, Jeff Paul, Hal Hutchison, quite a number of B-graders and C-graders going very well in that lot.
It's a very good point you make there, Will, because Michael Dowson is dominating the series, and of course Dowson won the Castrol 6-hour race with McGee, and the previous year's winner, as you say, Richard Scott, has come to England this year and had done very, very well, been very impressed, you know, He's impressed everybody in England, and will be going on to greater things, as I'm sure Michael Dowson could do.
Robert Holden riding there with a broken ankle, and Phil Watt has been in Japan this year, and they line up 15, 18, 20 starters already, and last away, it's 113 who David Lucci that gets away best. Young man going through the grades very quickly, but into the lead then goes 57, Hal Hutchison.
And all of a sudden, down the outside comes the rocket of Michael Dowson on the big Yamaha. He takes over the lead.
And Dowson was very, very slow off the line, actually. Some of the others seemed to jump the start, but it mattered little, because as soon as he got rolling, the power of the 1,000 just blasted everybody else behind him.
Jeff Paul's on 34, on 7 is Robert Holden.
Grant Hodgson on 78 in second position.
26-year-old from Warrandyte, Hodgson. Former motocross rider, A-grader there, but C-grader at the moment, amazingly, in road racing. Only 18 months in the category, going like a rocket. The man that kept Roger Hayes honest last weekend at Surfers.
And another thing that indicates just how important Australian production racing is the fact that the machine has debuted here, the 1000cc FZR Yamaha, and a lot of machines appear in Australia before we see them in Europe. And somebody going very, very wide on the 750 Suzuki there, almost lost the front end completely.
Hodgson.
Oh, and down goes another 750 Suzuki. Into the wall, he's okay.
Well done.
Settles down to become a spectator.
I'm very happy to be one at the moment. Michael Dowson leading from 113 is Lucci.
Oh, Grant Hodgson goes wide once more. His lines seem to be all over the place. He's really got to calm this down.
And some dodgy riding as they all take out after Michael Dowson, who's already opened more than a 2-second gap, 1.5 laps into the event.
But whose pit crews say that the rear tyre on that bike with 130 horsepower pumping through it is good for only 3 laps at its optimum. Let's have a look at this. Castrol corner coming onto the straight. And round and sideways and laying it down very gently.
Unfortunately, impossible to pick out the number of that bike as he slid past us rapidly. 57 was the man, Hal Hutchison.
And Hutchison, in fact, was quite well placed in the series, in 7th place, in fact, on 13 points. Lap 2 down, out on lap 3, Michael Dowson. The lap record already in his care, 1 minute 17.3, 0.7 of a second, under the lap record previously held by Richard Scott.
And a lead of 2.65 seconds to his advantage at this stage. Good stuff for 3rd and 4th place. Grant Hodgson only just stays in the saddle of 78 as he gets the power on too early, trying to chase Robert Holden.
Grant Hodgson, in fact, is currently 2nd in the series on 24 points, timed with Paul Feeney. Let's see him again.
He was offline anyway, and he rescued that pretty well.
And really, the smartest thing that Hodgson can be doing at this stage is consolidating his 2nd place in the series.
Is the battle for 2nd place as the race leader goes through, braking, a heavy braking for Castrol corner from 113 Lucci. He's a young man on the way up in B grade, being followed by 7 Robert Holden. Holden's going to give him a determined run for his money too.
Comes down the outside now, passes him. Lucci in 3rd place in the series, or rather 4th place in the series on 20 points.
Suzuki 750 versus Yamaha 750, leading Yamaha 1000.
And we're watching now number 7, Robert Holden, on the Dunlop Shot Action Suzuki. And of course, this was the combination which was the fastest the combination on the track towards the end of the Castrol 6 hour, and yet they're nowhere near Michael Dowson. It just shows what a quantum leap the FZR 1000 has put into production racing.
Mind you, it'd be interesting to see the FZR over 6 hours and how many rear tyres they'd have to throw at the bike and how much time it would drop in the latter parts of a riding stint.
Yes, a good point. Well, as we worked out at Surface Paradise, that normally they'll change one rear tyre an hour sort of thing, or one rear tyre a session, and they have to sort of throw something like 3 rear tyres at the Yamaha unless the tyre companies come up with some better rubber.
Did you see it sideways there? He was actually opposite locking it in the middle of Castrol Corner there, Michael Dowson.
Robert Holden in second place, David Lucci in third, and Holden opening the gap on Lucci, but you'd have to suggest that there's no way known that he's going to close the gap between himself and Michael Dowson.
Oh, he's got it sliding too.
So that's an interesting tyre war out the front as well, because it's a Pirelli shod bike leading number 7 here, a Dunlop shod bike, then an Avon shod FZ750 behind.
Motorcycles not nearly as advanced in radial tyre construction as cars are, where it's virtually universal these days and has been for a long time. And so we've got the leading production bike here on MP7 Pirellis, which are radials, but most of the others on crossply.
Yes, and even the MP7 are not what we would call a 100% pure radial. They're rather a combination. And there's Dowson leading by a handsome margin from the second place man here, number 7, Robert Holden.
Completing 5 in this 10-lap race, 26.2 kilometres. Robert Holden tucked down and determined. The man who, when he went past Malcolm Campbell on the straight on the Honda 750 during the 6 hour, absolutely reduced the morale of the Tasmanian, who claimed that Holden's bike must have been a hot one. 78 there, as you can see. Grant Hodgson being caught by Trevor Manley, the former Specialised 125cc Grand Prix rider.
Manley getting himself into all kinds of trouble, thought twice about diving inside there, and now he tries to go around the outside, very, very wide. Oh, chopped off again by 78. These guys are showing some interesting lines.
And again, and this time says, I'll take it back. Thanks very much.
Trevor Manley takes a totally unclassic line and but looks across at Hodgson and says, well, I'm going up here to get past you. I don't like the way you're playing. And he's now third. And in fact, fourth place, yes.
Hodgson's not giving it up, however, and he charges down under brakes.
Yes, these two bikes just about identical, both 750 Suzuki's, both getting a little bit loose coming out of the corner there. It'll be interesting to see whether Hodgson can pick up a slipstream from Manley. A little bit too far behind to do it.
And Michael Dowson's lead is 4.49 seconds.
Yes, it's getting pretty loose and shaky, the pair of them here. Obviously right on the limit.
And behind those three, this is the battle for fourth place. Trevor Manley at the moment, Grant Hodgson, the C grader, challenging him all the way and giving him a very hard time. A young man on the way forward, surely, in road racing.
And Hodgson tried to go up the inside of Manley before the bridge, and in fact made a bit of a mess of it, lost a lot of ground. And Hodgson really's got to collect his thoughts. He's got to think what he's doing, watch where Manley's running a little bit wide, and put some sort of very well thought out lap together, because at the moment Manley's getting away from him.
Still fourth and hanging on well, as Michael Dowson makes very little time in the lead. 4.51 seconds now, pulling out only 200ths of a second in the last lap over second place Robert Holden on the Suzuki 750.
Dowson, of course, giving his Yamaha team some tyre changing practice at Oran Park today, because between the FM production bike series and the Swan Insurance motorcycle series, he changes his tyres from the groove tyres you see on his bike at the moment to slicks.
And it's quite a job for Dowson to bear that in mind. He's out on the motorcycle. It looks exactly the same as it does slick or treaded tyre. And yet, of course, the amount of grip provided by the treaded road-going tyre is nowhere near the ultimate grip provided by the slick. And he could really get in over his head if he wasn't thinking carefully about what he was doing.
I'm sure he's getting plenty of feel from the bike, and probably the first few laps through some of the faster corners, he has to be aware of it. But out now on his 9th lap.
And the bike really weaving around there as he pushes all kinds of braking loads into it.
4.73 seconds. This gap back to second place Robert Holden, the Kiwi, who was tossed off at about 180 kilometres an hour 2 weeks ago at Suzuka, took the cast off his broken ankle himself. And 113, David Lucci is third. This is the battle. Still Trevor Manley dominant over Grant Hodgson for fourth.
Certainly looks as though Hodgson 78 has thought what he's doing. He's put a couple of good laps together, got back onto the tail of Manley.
Wizard Racing not only does the bike preparation and makes leather clothing and runs a milk bar, but does the sign writing as well, and turns out a very nice motorbike. Some real characters actually involved with that. Dean Riggins, a 38-year-old who's been active in the sport. He's been around it for a long while, but only in the last 3 months has he got Wizard Racing going, and he reckons he's onto a good thing with Grant Hodgson.
Oh, and Hodgson gets it loose again.
Hang on to it through there, because there's very nasty terrain down there.
Manley looks over his shoulder to see Hodgson not very far behind.
Dowson doesn't have to look behind him very much at all. Well under control, but again, lest you think that 130 horsepower and 1,000 cc's makes life easy, it's very hard indeed. He's sliding this bike a lot. He's been down on grip on the rear tyre really since the latter part of since probably the first 3 or 4 laps, and he's working it very hard, and it's taking a lot of skill to produce the lap times. Enormous power, acceleration, rear wheel that wants to spin every time he opens the throttle, and he's not backing off an inch. Coming up to complete 10 laps for this second heat of round 2 of the FM Challenge Series, and it's victory for Michael Dowson on the FZR 1000 Yamaha. A very convincing one, already a new lap record to him. Robert Holden takes second place on number 7. And third place goes to 113, David Lucci. And then fourth place, Trevor Manley over Grant Hodgson on 78 in 5th. And the race time for Michael Dowson in taking victory over those 10 laps, 13 minutes, 1.96 seconds, 119.5 kilometres an hour, victorious over the 750 Suzuki of Robert Holden, and David Lucci third on 113.
Interesting point score situation. With that win, Michael Dowson moves to a commanding lead now of 60 points in the FM series with 4 straight wins. But second place now is tied between Grant Hodgson and Luthji, both on 30 points. So the final series at Calder International in Melbourne next weekend should be a ripper dice between Hodgson and Luthji, and an opportunity, of course, for Michael Dowson to pick another lap record up.
Good riding on a most impressive motorcycle. the man who just loved to have the ride, the opportunity that's befallen Kevin Magee, a man only a couple of years younger, but not so much the age that made the difference as the fact that Dawson had done more and had more experience. It was probably felt by his team, there's Glenn Willing looking after the bike, that he was closer to his potential than was Kevin Magee. And look at the crowd that's come here, really delighting in the performance of the Aussie against the Englishman, Rob McElnay. Scattered around the 2.62 kilometre track, plenty of room for spectating, so that there in fact is a very good crowd here indeed, much better than there was for the Castrol 6 Hour, which is unusual, because the Castrol 6 Hour always pulls a big crowd, but the Swan Series, I think you'd agree, John Smales, since it was started in 1978, has always been a very hard-fought and entertaining series.
Indeed it has. Well, it's had a number of winners over the time. Of course, Wayne Gardner won it on 3 occasions, and the only man, in fact, to win it more than once. So it has been hard-fought indeed.
Michael, this is getting a little monotonous, but did you think that great start David Lufke got that you might have a bit more of a battle this race than previous races?
Well, the only problem I had was rear tyre on the FZR was a bit soft, and that was giving us trouble, especially this circuit where there's a lot of corners. And yeah, I was pretty concerned because I knew most of those guys are pretty hot production racers, and they've had all season to sort their machines out. So no, we're very happy with the FZR, and it's world debut last weekend, and our second race this weekend. We're all very happy with it.
Yes, as part of this racing program in the FM series, you're also testing it for Yamaha. Is there a conflict of interest there? Do you go out with different settings each race just to find out the potential of the bike?
Well, no, I think all we're doing is virtually trying to get it as good as I feel to be suited to me on the racing track. So I think that I'll just consider the adjustments after that, refine them to their own needs, I suppose.
So it's not going to be a case of you saying one thing about the bike and that's how it will come out on the showroom floor? Not
necessarily, no. It'll be, it's for a domestic market and it's for all over the world, so they've got to suit it to their own riders, I suppose. But I think it's just a part of the program to evaluate it, just see how strong the machine is in production racing form. So I think that point is taken very well.
Well, you seem confident about making it the clean sweep. There's just Calder to go now. How are you feeling?
Well, fine. Calder's going to be a very exciting circuit for the FZR because there's a bit of a jump in it involved. You can do some nice wheel stands of it. So I think we'll all have some fun down there at Calder Park.
All right, have some fun in the final race in the program, the Swan Series. I'll call Janet Brown in, who's Miss Oran Park, to present you with a trophy.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks.
Right, Michael, we'll let you go and hop on board the machine with new tyres on for the FM series, but in the meantime, it's back up to Will.
Where we'll have a look in just a moment at the 250 A grade race run earlier today. That was an 8-lapper, 21 kilometres, and it was a beauty.
And we pick it up with 4 laps to go in the A grade race as Jeffrey Sale on bike 10 leads bike 49, Roy Leslie on the Willing Motorcycles Yamaha 250.
Roy Leslie, a 30-year-old, he's a B grader, and this really was his day. He threw the bike away on Thursday, down the end of the straight when he decided to go and do an extra lap, and he said, I just must have forgotten, gone to sleep, because he said, I looked up and the bike was 2 metres from me, and I said, I'm on the road. And he hasn't been back to the track until today. He said, this is the first time we've got this S-model Yamaha really firing well, along with Jeffrey Sale and 4 other Aussies. There are just 6 in the country, and he reckons his is the only standard one.
Jeff Sale, in fact, has already won the Australian 250cc Road Race Championship for 1986 against Donny Osborne, who's racing in the Swan Insurance Series on the ex-Malcolm Campbell Honda 500. But Jeffrey to defend, or rather to chase, Osborne's 350cc title at Calder Park next weekend in the final round of the Australian Road Race Championship, which will be run conjointly with the Swan Insurance Series.
And Jeffrey Sale's bike, number 10, the leading machine, certainly isn't standard because his brother Murray, a very experienced road racer, talented man himself, who now just looks after Jeffrey's machine, has done an awful lot of work on the 250 Yamaha, changing the reed valves, changing the carburation, changing in fact the carburetors themselves. So the Celastic Yamaha, very different from standard, and they think it's pulling a much higher gearing than the rest of the machinery here today.
Actually, this is a a race for older people, if you like. You can take a little bit of heart because Roy Leslie's 30 and Jeffrey Sale is a year or so past that. And things really did just come together for him. Sale, though, of course, campaigned in Europe and found out just how hard it was over there, Peter Clifford, how much finance you needed to get the best rubber and to have plenty of it and to throw it on the bike whenever you needed it. How hard you had to work to get an engine advantage over tough opposition, but plenty of it.
Yes, it's almost really sad for me to see Jeffrey back in Australia here, winning races, doing very, very well for himself, but still showing the sort of style and the ability that I really feel should have him racing in the Grand Prix. There are guys riding in Grand Prix today that are certainly not as good as Jeff Sale.
Leslie now within 2 seconds of Sale with 3 laps remaining in this 250cc A-grade race. There was in fact a move afoot to try and get Sale to enter this 250cc bike in this one international series, and there are people who feel that he would have been a good contender for 5th or 6th position. But of course this one series is for bikes over or just on 500cc upwards to 1,000.
A man moving his way forward, I think, on Jeffrey Sale, and certainly on 49 Roy Leslie in second place is Steve Watts from Hartmore Club in Victoria, who's been a long time in Japan this year, most of the year, and has had a very disappointing year. But on bike 69, he's making a determined effort to get up with them. There he is, just a flash of him.
So Leslie now with challenges from behind as he strives to catch Jeffrey Sale in the lead. Sale so precise on the motorcycle. And there comes Watts, bike 69.
An interesting technical point of Watts' machine is it uses Bridgestone slip tyres. They're only really experimental tyres, not used in Europe at all, but obviously Watts proving that they're maybe going to be a force to be reckoned with in the future.
What's annoying about Jeffrey Sale, and I don't like the young man for it at all, is that I saw him start on a 250 production bike. I've seen him go through the ropes, go to Europe, come back, and I'm still here. And so's Jan Blizzard, who works so hard for the ACU of New South Wales and is always everywhere at every race meeting. Leslie, second place, but being threatened by Watts. Watts on 69. Giving him a hard time. Leslie's from Gosford. Willing Motorcycles prepare the bike.
Watts now really starts to throw out the challenge on Leslie. Here he goes. Out on his last lap. Jeffrey Sale, the blue flag indicating 1 lap to go. 2.62 kilometres. Can Watts catch Leslie? Sale seems pretty right for the lead, but the race is for second position. Ever so closer comes Watts. There's an exploratory look down the inside into the first or second gear corner.
Roy Leslie, lovely bloke that he is, 30 years old, said, you recorded it.
And he's got him.
He said as he goes back to third place, but he said as he was packing his bike up, he said, this is the first time I've ever been on television. He was quite thrilled at the prospect. Jeffrey Sale, on the other hand, knows the experience well. And Steve Watts trying to say to people back here with the hope that he can come up with something good for next year. But what happened in Japan throughout this year wasn't a pile of long excuses. Certainly was a string of disappointments. But he's trying to say and hope that there's plenty of promise left for next year. Very close as he makes ground on Sale even. Watts, third place Leslie. Running to the finishing line though, it's Jeffrey Sale for victory in the 250cc A grade over 8 laps. Good victory, 1.36 seconds ahead. A race time of 10 minutes, 25.3 seconds, averaging 119.9 kilometres an hour, just over Steve Watts, 1.36 seconds, and Roy Leslie third on number 49.